March 7th, 1945. 3:20 in the afternoon. Remagen, Germany, on the western bank of the Rhine. Captain Karl Friesenhahn turned the key. Nothing happened. Across the river, roughly 6,000 pounds of demolition charges sat wired to the Ludendorff bridge, and not one of them detonated. Somewhere in the steel conduit running beneath the bridge deck, the electrical circuit had failed. The last major bridge standing across the Rhine, Germany's final natural barrier, was still intact. And an American infantry company was already at the western approach, sprinting onto the span. Friesenhahn had one job. He had planned for this moment for weeks. He had the charges in place, the wiring laid, the backup fuse ready. He was the man Germany trusted to deny the Americans the Rhine. In the space of a single keystroke, everything collapsed. Not the bridge, but the plan to destroy it. This is how the door to Germany came open. To understand what Friesenhahn was carrying that afternoon, you need to understand what the Rhine meant in March of 1945. The German army on the Western Front was broken. The Ardennes offensive, launched just 3 months earlier, had bled the Wehrmacht dry. Divisions that once held solid lines were now straggling east in disorganized columns. And the Rhine, wide, cold, fast, was the one geographic barrier that could slow the Allied advance long enough for Germany to regroup. Every bridge over the Rhine had standing demolition orders. Every bridge, when the moment came, was to be dropped into the river before the Allies could cross. Every bridge went down. Every bridge except one. The Ludendorff bridge at Remagen had been wired for demolition in layers. The original plan called for 60 zinc-lined explosive boxes bolted to the bridge's girders, enough to drop the entire span cleanly. But Allied bombs had removed those charges months earlier for safety, and when the engineers rearmed the bridge in early March, they discovered the situation was already compromised. Friesenhahn had requested 1,300 pounds of military-grade explosive. What arrived on the morning of March 7th was half that, roughly 660 pounds, and it was not military grade. It was Donnerit, a commercial mining explosive, significantly weaker than the standard formula. Friesenhahn knew it. He placed every pound of it on the bridge's southeastern pier and hoped. That hope ran into a second problem that no engineer could fix. By 11 that morning, Major Hans Scheller had arrived to take tactical command. A last-minute reassignment that Captain Willy Bratke, the bridge's garrison commander, had not been notified about until Scheller walked in the door. 2 officers now held overlapping authority. Bratke wanted to blow the bridge immediately. Scheller refused. Thousands of retreating German troops were still crossing to the east bank. Artillery units, rocket batteries, scattered infantry. Scheller would not order the detonation with his own men still on the structure. The written demolition order, required by Hitler's own standing directive following a premature bridge destruction the previous year, had not been issued. Every hour of delay was a bet on timing. At 2 in the afternoon, with American infantry reported fighting through the town of Remagen below, Friesenhahn made his first move. He detonated the smaller charge beneath the bridge's western approach ramp. The blast opened a 30-foot crater in the roadbed, enough to stop tanks from rushing directly onto the span. It bought minutes, not hours. American engineers and infantry were already working the outer edge of the town. By 3:15, Brigadier General William Hoge had received a message from captured German prisoners. The bridge was scheduled for demolition at 4 o'clock. He sent a direct order to his forward elements, 45 minutes to take the bridge. Lieutenant Karl Timmermann, 23 years old, born in Frankfurt, now commanding Company A of the 27th Armored Infantry Battalion, heard the order and looked at the bridge. Machine guns were firing from the towers on the eastern bank. Smoke drifted across the Rhine. Timmerman told his men they were going. Back at the tunnel mouth on the far side, Friesenhahn reached the detonation panel and turned the key. The electric circuit, tested hours earlier and found functional, produced nothing. A shell concussion somewhere along the line had severed or damaged the conduit. The primary charge was dead. There was still the backup. A German corporal named Anton Faust ran from the tunnel onto the bridge under American fire and reached the primer cord on the southeastern pier. He lit it. The cord burned. Seconds later, the Donnerett charge detonated. A single blast that cracked the steel diagonals on the bridge's upstream side, sagged the deck by roughly 6 inches, and shook the structure hard enough to knock debris into the Rhine. The bridge swayed. It did not fall. Timmerman and his men were already moving through the smoke when the blast hit. The explosion knocked several soldiers off their feet, but no one was killed outright. Timmerman was back up before the debris finished falling. He waved his company forward. Behind him, 3 engineers from the 9th Armored Engineer Battalion, Lieutenant Hugh Mott and Sergeants Eugene Dorland and John Reynolds, were crawling beneath the deck, locating live charge boxes, cutting wires, kicking unexploded demolition packs into the river below. Sergeant Alexander Drabick crossed first, at a run, the first foreign soldier to reach the east bank of the Rhine since the Napoleonic Wars. He later said the 300-foot span felt like 300 miles. Within 15 minutes, elements of Company A were across. Within an hour, 120 troops held the far shore. By midnight, after engineers filled the crater and planked the damaged sections, the first American tanks began rolling over. 8,000 American soldiers were across the Rhine by the evening of March 8th. In the tunnel beneath the Erpeler Lay, the rock hill above the eastern bank, Friesenhahn and Bratke gathered the surviving defenders. They tried to organize a breakout to the east. They found American soldiers already holding both ends of the tunnel. After a white flag appeared from among the civilians sheltering in the rock, the Germans surrendered. Friesenhahn and Bratke walked out with their hands up. The court-martial convened within days. Hitler's fury demanded scapegoats. Major Scheller, 2 engineer majors, and the anti-aircraft lieutenant were convicted of dereliction and shot in the back of the neck. Their letters home burned, their families stripped of military pensions. Friesenhahn, in American custody, was tried in absentia and acquitted. The tribunal accepted that his charges had failed for reasons outside his control. 11 V-2 rockets were fired at the bridge over the following days. 11 missed. German bombers attacked it. Artillery struck it dozens of times. A special naval demolitions team carrying Italian underwater breathing apparatus floated downstream to plant mines and arrived too late, the bridge already in its final hours. On March the 17th, 10 days after the crossing, the Ludendorff bridge collapsed into the Rhine from structural fatigue and accumulated damage. 28 American engineers working on the span died in the fall. The bridge that Hitler had tried everything to destroy finally went down, because it had been used too hard by too many men, not because Germany ever managed to stop it. If you want to understand how close it actually was, the detonator timing, the chain of command trap, and the 3 other bridges that night, where the charges worked exactly as planned. There are cases in the pinned comment that walk through the full technical sequence from the engineering records. Worth reading alongside this one. The bridgehead Friesenhahn failed to prevent became the springboard. Within 3 weeks, Allied forces had crossed the Rhine at multiple points. Germany's last natural line was gone. The war in Europe would end in 58 days. One key failed at 3:20 in the afternoon. That was enough. Friesenhahn lived. He was the only officer at Remagen that day whose name history did not turn into a grave marker. He had done everything the system allowed him to do, with half the explosives he needed, weaker than specified, against a circuit no one knew was broken. He turned the key and nothing happened, and the war moved through the hole that opened. There is an argument, supported by the record, that the bridge at Remagen could not have survived that afternoon, regardless of Friesenhahn's best efforts. The explosives were inadequate. The command structure was fractured. The timing had been handed to too many men who each needed something different from it. But the argument that matters, the one that echoes in the operational reports and the court-martial documents and the memoirs of the men who ran across, is simpler. A single working circuit on March 7th would have changed the calculation for 58 days. One functioning wire, one full charge, one clear order delivered 30 minutes earlier. The bridge stayed up. The key turned. The door opened.